If you're listening to this, then you're probably a non-traditional student. Go check out the pre-med year, session number 218, to hear an amazing non-trad pre-med story. You can hear that at medicalschoolhq.net/218. This is the Old Pre-Meds podcast, session number 58. You're a non-traditional student entering the medical field on your terms. You may have had some hiccups along the way, but now you're ready to change course and go back and serve others as a physician. This podcast is here to help answer your questions and help educate you on your non-traditional journey to becoming a physician. Welcome to the Old Pre-Meds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ryan Gray, and in this podcast, we share with you questions from the Old Pre-Meds forums over at oldpremeds.org. Today's question is an interesting one about a student looking to figure out whether or not he or she needs to do some extracurricular activities while he or she is studying for the MCAT as well. I'm going to say he because the username on here is Jacob, so I'm going to just say he to make it easy. I'm not judging if it's a he or she. I'm just making it easier for me. All right, so with that said, this poster said, I am currently studying for the MCAT. I graduated 2 years ago in 2015, and after working in the emergency room as a medical scribe this past year, I realized becoming a physician was my calling. I'm going to stop there and interject. If Jacob was working in an emergency room as a scribe, why were they doing that if being a physician wasn't their calling? So I'm interested to know why they were doing that in the first place. All right. Jacob then says, I stopped working as a scribe in August 2016 and returned back to school in September of 2016, taking a few courses that I thought would help me with the MCAT. I also took an MCAT prep course, which began in October, and I had hopes of taking the MCAT in January, but unfortunately my scores are not where they need to be. All right, break again. So Jacob did a smart thing. He took a prep course and through his practice test realized that the score wasn't where he wanted it to be. I'd be interested to know where he wants it to be to see if it's realistic or not. But it's smart to delay. Go ahead and register for the test because that's huge and you want to make sure you have a seat. And if your scores aren't there, then you can withdraw from that test. All right, back to Jacob here. It says, as a result, I pushed my MCAT back to the end of March. With that being said, I was planning on taking it in January and have other things lined up between now and March, such as a part-time job and volunteer work. I am concerned about putting more things on my plate while approaching the MCAT, and I'm wondering what would be the best course of action. I could either continue studying for the MCAT for another 2 months, with little else to show on my resume besides that, i.e. not doing any extracurricular activities for 6 months, just studying for the MCAT. Or I could take on those other extracurriculars such as volunteering and the part-time job and try and balance it all out while studying for the MCAT. I feel like focusing on the MCAT is the best course of action and not getting bogged down by other activities, but I am worried med schools will look at this 6-month time period and wonder, quote, what else were you doing during this time, end quote. As if studying for the MCAT was not enough and I should have been doing more extracurricular activities as well. Any advice would be great. Thank you. All right, so Jacob, here are my thoughts. First thought, you shouldn't worry about what medical schools are going to think. That's number one, with an asterisk. And if you go and look at the forums, again, I encourage you, if you're new to this podcast and you haven't checked out the oldpremeds.org forums, go check it out. The first person that left a comment basically said the same thing. Don't worry about what the med schools say. But there is one caveat. Med schools will see this break and go, well, if you really want to be a physician, why was there this break? I would say, though, that 6 months is okay, as long as soon as you take that MCAT, you pick it right back up so that there's this break, but you're continuing to do it. Don't drop it completely and then apply and have this break that ended a year from when you actually submit your applications. So show that there's the 6-month break. they're smart enough, they'll see when you took the MCAT, and they'll hopefully assume that that's why you had that break. So that's the first thing. I would say, though, that doing some extracurricular activities may help your MCAT score. And that's because you're getting out and allowing your brain to think about other things. And getting out of the house and getting your head out of the books will help. It'll also help when you're sitting there studying and you're frustrated and you take that next 8-hour practice test and it's not the score that you want, and you're frustrated and you want to give up. Having that break and doing those extracurriculars and maybe being around patients and being around physicians is going to shine some light and show you why you're doing this to yourself. And let's be honest, you're doing it to yourself. So we all have been there and done that. So I think having some variety will be good for you and will allow you to break the monotony of just studying for the MCAT. And you'll come back refreshed and with fresh eyes and ready to learn and figure out and do better. I would also say if your grades, if your practice test scores are not going up, go check out Next Step Test Prep Tutoring. Their job is to figure out why you're not doing well on the tests. Their tutors don't help you learn the content. Their job is to help you with the test. Go over to nextsteptestprep.com. Use the promo code MSHQ. That's for Medical School Headquarters. MSHQ will save you some money on tutoring. That is where I would take your next step. Kaplan and Princeton Review and all of them are great for teaching you content, but Next Step one-on-one tutors are there to help you overcome your brain block on doing well, actually taking the test. So that's what I would recommend as your next step. So think about that. Number one, don't worry about what the schools are thinking, because yes, the MCAT is important, and so you need to maximize that as best you can. Number two, doing those extracurriculars may help you do better on the MCAT because you're getting out of the house and you're clearing your head of the MCAT and you're hopefully getting less frustrated and everything else. And number three, if your test scores are not going up, go check out Next Step Test Prep Tutoring, MSHQ, to save some money. All right, I hope that helped, and I hope you will take advantage of some of those things that I talked about. And more importantly, I hope you continue to listen here every week at the Old Pre-Meds podcast. I would love for you to subscribe in iTunes, or if you are on an Android device, you can listen as well and subscribe as well. Podcast Addict, rather, is one of the free and one of the most highly rated podcast apps for Android. Download it. Look for MedEd Media. You'll find all 4 of my podcasts there. As we're recording this, we only have 4. Hopefully, we'll have more in the future. Go check that out. Subscribe so that you get this podcast every week delivered right to your phone. While you're in there, go ahead and leave a rating and review, too. All right, I hope you have a great week, and please come back next week here at the Medical School Headquarters and the Old Pre-Meds podcast.